So how do you handle a challenge? When you get asked this question, which is a fairly common interview question, fairly common behavioral interview question, there's a couple reasons that they might be asking you this question. Oftentimes, what they're looking to understand is how do you handle adversity? What happens when something blows up in your face? How do you handle it? What's your approach? How do you think strategically? Do you lay out plans or do you just dive right into it? How do you lay out a plan? What does that look like for you? How are you at analyzing what possible solutions might be? So, how do you think strategically? And the last one that they're looking for is how do you lead others, right? How do you bring others along? Are you the person who's running, head first into the brick wall, or do you bring others with you so you can all crush through it together, right? So I think how do you handle a challenge? I am personally looking for leadership, but I think broadly, if you can tell a story of how do you handle adversity, how do you think strategically, and how do you lead others, you'll tell a really good story to this answer. So first thing, don't give the blog post answer, right? I think with all these behavioral interviews, the more general they get as a question, the easier it is to give a very generic answer. Oh, well, I handle a challenge by really approaching it systematically and laying out all my options and then creating a plan and yada, yada. That's the blog post answer. That's what would come up when I typed in, I have a challenge at work. How do I handle it? Right? You don't want to go down this bullet point list of, well, theoretically, here's the management textbook about how to handle challenges. Don't give a blog post answer. Because again, I like my new thing is to say, respect your enemy. Respect the other people getting interviewed. They are also very qualified, very talented, very educated, very studied up on the role, very prepared. They are all of those things. So you're not going to get the job by being correct. Oh, well, this is the right way to handle a challenge. I learned this in business school. You're going to be memorable by sharing a story. So try to avoid giving that cookie cutter broad answer, which is many people's instinct. I watch every single video that goes up on Riveter, and I see over and over again, the instinct is to say, well, this is the right way to do it. Try to avoid that, share a story so that you can stand out. The next is pick up a specific challenge and tell the story. So, right? And so what do you do if it's not a blog post answer, if it's not a generic thing? You tell an actual story. So use that STAR format. Tell me how you approach the challenge, right? First set up, what was the challenge? How did you approach it? How did you think about it? Then give me specifics about your mindset and your decision-making, right? What I'm really wanting to know, certainly what was the challenge, what was the result of the challenge, but I'm trying to understand your approach. Do you brute force things? Do you bring others along with you? Did you analyze 15 different options for 30 days and then decide on the right one? Meaning, did you sharpen your axe to chop down the cherry tree? Or did you just start hammering it away? Not that there's necessarily a right or a wrong, but I'm looking for something specific in my role, and you probably get a sense of that from the job description. And if it says looking for someone very analytical, well, I hope you didn't jump in right away and start trying to solve problems. I hope you have a story where you're analytical. If they're looking for someone who's, a real self-starter, really self-motivated, well, I hope you didn't wait 4 weeks before coming to a decision and you were able to try some things out and then quickly iterate. I picked this image of Harry defeating the basilisk in the second Harry Potter movie because, for all real Harry Potter fans, you probably know that after Harry finished at Hogwarts, he went off to work for the Ministry of Magic. And if somebody asked him, well, Mr. Potter, tell me about how you handle a challenge. Well, Harry's got so many challenges he could have picked from. He could have talked about anything. He could have blended them all together. Well, let me tell you about the time I beat Voldemort in the graveyard, or the time I beat Squirrel near the Sorcerer's Stone, or any one of those. But instead, he'd say, well, let me tell you about the time I fought the evil snake in the dungeons of Hogwarts. And my approach was the same as it always was. I ran around like a crazy person, almost killed all of my friends, and saved the day at the last minute, on deadline, over budget. That's Harry's style. Whatever your style is, pick that one specific challenge and share your approach to the whole thing. Now, the last point is try to turn this into an opportunity. So you want to make sure that this is a challenge that you succeeded in, right? As much as possible in interviews, and it's very easy to tell disparaging stories, self-disparaging stories. Oh, I had this thing and it didn't quite work out. Or, oh, we went for this thing and, well, we failed for these 3 reasons. And it has its place, right? Talking about failure and how you grew from that and turned into success has its place and shows a lot of value to me. But you control the narrative. Never forget that the reason that we practice is so that you have these stories in your back pocket and you get to decide which story you're going to tell at any given point. So when you're asked any of these behavioral questions and you get to choose what story to tell, make it a successful story. Make it a story where you conquered the challenge. And then share if it fits into your narrative and if you've got something. I think ending with a philosophy is always so valuable because it shows that you really learned something from this. And if you could tie that to the role, that's even better. So the way we had this big challenge that we had to hit our quota and we only had a month left and we had to do more sales than ever. So I actually got all my peers in a room and I said, all right, we got to sell 30 deals in 30 days. That means we got to sell a deal a day. And then the funnel looks like this. What do we need? And we realized that what we need is a better marketing strategy. So in a week, I came up with a better marketing strategy, yada, yada, yada. And it resulted in us hitting our quota. And so what I learned is that marketing is actually a really important corollary to sales. And now as I interview for your sales role, I'm really making sure, I'm really curious to understand how your marketing organization works, right? All of a sudden you took the philosophy you learned from your challenge, you turned it into something you can apply to this role, into something conversational. And I love this image that I'm going to share, and this is where we're going to end. And you may have heard the story before, but it goes something like this, where someone walks upon three men, and they ask the first one, "What are you doing?" And the first one says, "Well, I'm laying bricks." All right. They come to the second one, "Well, sir, what are you doing?" The man says, "I'm building a wall." All right, that sounds good. And they walk over to the third one, "Sir, what are you doing?" "Well, I am building a cathedral." When you share your stories, that ambition of building a cathedral should be there. And when you're talking about how you turned a challenge into an opportunity and you talk about how great it felt and what it was like and how you brought the team along, think cathedral, not just bricks. Now, your philosophy might be it takes a bunch of bricks to build a cathedral, right? Well, you got to get into the nitty gritty and you got to know step by step and whatever. But think big and be very proud of your accomplishments, especially when you're doing things like turning challenges into successes. So here's what we're going to do now. I'll quickly go over it in case somebody hasn't recorded an answer before, but go to Riveter. You'll find this question if you're in the questions tab. This is the homepage, basically. Go in the questions tab, general interview, click behavioral, and it's the third question down over here. If you want to see how other people answer these questions, they've got a couple of answers. You can watch these answers, see how Steve answered the question, for example. And whenever you're ready to practice your own answer, you can come in here and practice your answer. This screen will open up. If you have a premium account, you'll see a little video of me giving a 2-minute tip about how to answer this.